Well, now, look, this by-election for the New South Wales seat of Upper Hunter is a litmus test for all political parties in the country and a barometer of Australia's future. We're still in an energy mess. No party has a coherent or sensible strategy, let alone a responsible realisation that coal is critical to our energy security and our industrial competitiveness. No person in any government could articulate in a couple of simple sentences, that is, those people in government, I'm talking about in the ministry, what our energy policy is, because they're terrified of mentioning the word coal. Even though it brings in over $70 billion of export money, it provides in the Hunter Valley 110,000 jobs. The mine expansion that Turnbull didn't want at Mount Pleasant would create 1,300 jobs. But it was Turnbull in February 2017, while still Prime Minister, who told the National Press Club that old, high emissions coal power plants, quote, cannot simply be replaced by gas because it's too expensive, or by wind and solar because they're intermittent. He supported coal exports to India, saying, quote, India has a massive program of expanding electrification across the country, and Australian coal has a very big role to play in that. In August 2017, he said, I don't foresee there being any barrier to a new coal-fired power station being built. On June 27, 2018, Turnbull told the federal parliament correctly that, quote, people have been paying too much for electricity and that, quote, coal is always going to be a big part of bringing prices down. And, quote, I believe coal will be a big part of it for a very long time. You see, this is the issue with this by-election. When politicians across the country are chasing the votes of coal miners, they're strong supporters of coal. Since Turnbull was dumped, he's become an opponent. Then we have this bloke Keane in New South Wales, a walking contradiction. In June 2019, Keane said, quote, I don't care how we get our energy, whether it's coal, gas or renewables. What I care about is delivering on our objectives of reliable and affordable energy, unquote. Of course, solar and wind are neither reliable nor affordable. In September 2019, he said coal was critical to the state's energy future. Quote, we won't place ideology before people. Indeed, he said he was willing to legislate to ensure long-term coal supply. And he wanted the people of New South Wales to protect the environment, but he said not at any cost to their hip pocket, and that New South Wales currently faced, quote, huge challenges in the supply of coal to coal-fired power stations, unquote. September 2019. But as the months passed, someone got at him. By December, he wanted to slash the state's carbon dioxide emissions by 35% by 2030 and turn New South Wales into, quote, the Saudi Arabia of solar, unquote. And by January 2020, well, he was talking about a post-fossil fuel world. No endorsement of coal. Indeed, in March 2020, he said the cheapest way to deliver electricity was, quote, not nuclear, not coal and not gas. And just on gas, in August of 2020, he supported the Narrabri gas project in New South Wales as, quote, critical for our stability of our energy system. That was August. Go Narrabri. September of the same year, 2020, quote, gas is not the future. At the time when the federal government was talking about a gas-led economic recovery, with which I might add I don't agree. But then, as the Hunter Valley, Upper Hunter by-election loomed, there he was a week ago, Keane, we support coal, we support coal mining, we support the coal mining industry, and, quote, the New South Wales government has a very strong commitment to the coal mining industry, unquote. One of the few people talking any sense on all of this, if you can make sense of those contradictions, is Matt Canavan. Matt, thank you for your time. What do you make of all those contradictions, Turnbull and Keane?
Well, I think the lesson, Alan, is every time there is an election, everybody rushes to express how much they support coal. Outside of the election, we constantly hear how terrible coal is and how it's no longer supported and it's dead and it's a four-letter word. And then as soon as actually the real people, the everyday people, your viewers get asked for their views, the curtain gets raised, the veil gets pulled down. And we all see the real true facts here is that the Australian people have this radical view, a radical idea that we should use our own natural resources to create our own jobs, that we should use the God-given blessings of Australian coal to create Australian jobs, good-paying jobs in industry and manufacturing, not just mining. That's what the Australian people want. Absolutely. I was down in Wollongong today at the Port Kembla Steelworks. There's a mine being held up by the New South Wales government there that could threaten one of our only two remaining steelworks. the people of Wollongong want to have those jobs stay in their steel city.
Absolutely.
And so I think the sooner we just listen to the Australian people the whole way through the election cycle, not just a few weeks before the election, the better it will be for our country, the more jobs we will create, and we may even get back to making things in this country again. How great would that be?
Look, in December last year, of course, it was as hot as hell. Coal supplied more than 80% of New South Wales' power needs. But when Keane passed that legislation, which you and I have talked about before, that would attract, he said, billions of dollars in renewable investment, he declared victory over, quote, the vested interests of coal barons. He wants us to now believe, with a by-election coming up, that he's in favour of coal. I mean, when coal was delivering $1.4 billion in royalties in New South Wales and employing tens of thousands of Australians, how can anyone believe these people, Matt?
Well, mate, I think the only barons here are sort of Ed and Kylie Barron on 231 Smith Street, right, in Cessnock. They're the people supporting the industry. It's the average everyday people who rely on industries like coal for their job. The average businesses in towns like Cessnock and Singleton, where I'm going tomorrow, which rely on an industry like coal to have people coming through coffee shops, to have people going to service stations, to have people repairing their cars at the mechanics. Without these sort of industries, we wouldn't have thriving country communities, and that's why they get so much support. Yeah. And so the vested interests here are these spivs in the banks and the financial industries that are making a mozza on the back of the average Australian consumer investing in renewable energy. Every wind turbine that goes up in this country gets hundreds of thousands of dollars. Last time I estimated it was $700,000 a year of your money for that turbine. So every time you pass a turbine down the highway, just think there's $700,000 of your dollars going to that big steel monstrosity every year.
That's true.
You're paying for it. You're paying for it. And
see, when Keane hosted, it's just like the absolute extent to which these people will tell untruths. Now, Keane hosted students in his parliamentary office last year with placards, "Fund our future, not gas." But when it was found out, he then said, gas is an important part of our economy. That was October 2020. But in September 2020, he said, gas had no future in New South Wales. I'm quoting him, the economics don't stack up. And we've got the best renewable resources anywhere on the planet. So in September, he's willing to legislate to ensure a long-term coal supply for mines like Mount Piper, but then he wants net zero emissions by 2050. How are the public to make any sense of these people, Matt Canavan?
Well, I think you've raised an important point there, Alan, that we need to stop hoodwinking our young people.
That's it.
That, yes, I understand that I was young once. I was blinded by utopian visions. I thought, I read the Communist Manifesto and thought, this sounds okay. But the real serious, intelligent adult people need to tell truths to younger people, that communism doesn't work, that taking away all incentives in life leads to misery, that denying ourselves our own natural resources but still shipping them over for other countries to use is the definition of insanity. We need to have strong leadership in this country given the threats that we face. And too many of my colleagues, I'm sad to say, go weak at the knees when a few 18-year-olds turn up at their office. Why don't you engage them? And I've had lots of conversations with activists, with environmentalists. They've got their heart in the right place, but engage them and actually explain in detail why our country continues to need industry. We continue to need to be able to make things to defend our country.
Why wouldn't you go, Matt, to an election saying to the public, listen, we will continue to support coal-fired power. We will build whatever coal mines are needed to secure cheap electricity, to maintain our exports, and by reducing the cost of energy, become internationally competitive again. And if you don't like it, vote against it. I know which way the public would vote.
That would be leadership, Alan. I mean, if we can't stand up to a few Greta Thunberg lookalikes here in Australia, how are we going to stand up to the Chinese Communist Party? I mean, if we can't tackle the incorrect and ignorant views on energy within our own community from some well-meaning but misguided people, how are we going to take the difficult decisions to handle the $1 trillion debt we've accumulated? We've got to get serious, and if we're not serious about tackling these relatively small issues, it's not the biggest thing in the world. Previous generations of Australians have had to face much, much greater threats, but we can't even tackle these ones. So let's get on top of this because it's just common sense to not ship your own natural resources to other countries to arm themselves while you tie one hand behind your back.
Yes.
So let's use our natural resources. And look, let's be serious here. If these people like Malcolm Turnbull really did think that the Upper Hunter, the good people of the Upper Hunter, don't want coal mines, that's what Malcolm's been claiming, why isn't someone like Malcolm Turnbull running? Why did the Labor Party pre-select a coal miner? Why isn't the Australia Institute and the Greens running a candidate on a platform to shut down all coal mining, the Upper Hunter? Because they'd win, apparently, if the likes of Malcolm were right. They're not even doing that. So I don't think the emperor has any clothes.
At the end of the day, though, are governments going to continue to yield to the Greens and the lefts, who at every election are a minority? Is that going to continue to happen to the detriment of the well-being of the nation and to the detriment of employment and jobs?
Well, I'm an optimist, Alan, because I think this country remains one that's run by the people, not by the elite. And so I think the work you do and your viewers will put Australia on the straight and narrow.
I agree with that.
So you know, people listening tonight, you have it within your power to call your local MP, get on the radio, write in, and say that you're sick of this rubbish, you're sick of that kowtowing to a loud minority in this country, and you want to see Australia return to the path of protecting itself, of investing in our own jobs and industries first.
Good on you. Great to talk to you, and we'll talk as often as is necessary. I agree with you, Matt. We'll win the battle. It'll be slow and hard work, but we don't mind either of both. Good to talk to you. Senator Matt Canavan.